Today, I am joined by Bryan Keith Thomas, who was born in Dyersburg, Tennessee, and he received his Master's of Fine Arts degree from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville in 1996. Thomas currently resides in Oakland, California, where he works as a professor of fine art within the painting and drawing and critical ethnic studies departments at the California College of the Arts in San Francisco, California. Thomas received the White House honor as First Lady Laura Bush's guest for his work within the Art in Embassies Program in Washington, D.C. In addition, his work has been exhibited locally, nationally, and internationally at Art Basel in Miami, Florida. That's happening now. The DeYoung Museum in San Francisco, California, Oakland Museum of California in Oakland, Gallery Guichard in Chicago, Illinois, ArtJaz Gallery in Philadelphia, E&S Gallery in Louisville, the American Embassy in Dakar, Senegal, Sable Museum in Chicago, Illinois, amongst others. Furthermore, his paintings are in several private and public collections worldwide. I'm not going to read your artist statement because I think we're going to get into that part, and I don't want to take any of the thunder away from that. But Keith, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure. My
How
pleasure.
are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm productive.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to, stuff that I've called mine and stuff that I'm walking around and stuff that I'm kind of seeing, responding to objects and people, and staying in my feelings and allowing those feelings to create in a physical way, called art.
And where are you joining us on this call?
I'm here in my studio in Oakland, California, which is a live workspace. I kind of found out a long time ago that I need to live, I need to sleep, I need to see my things. I used to have this studio away from my house, and you walk in there and it looked like I was in there, but it's really like a stage set, and I would come home and work in my space. So I put an addition on my house, and I realized everything in my living space was art, and I needed to see it, and I needed to create relationships with it, and give it the title art.
I love that. I love that. So as living with your artwork, at all times, do you find that you keep regular studio hours, or are you one of these people where you wake up with an idea at 3 a.m. and you have to you have to get working? And I guess it's not necessarily traveling away to a studio, or do you have a regular studio period that you work within?
No, on average, I like to be in my studio either early in the morning or in the evening. Whenever I think about, the studio, I go there. But like I said, the entire space is a studio. So, the kitchen is a studio. The music room is a studio, meaning there's stuff drying, there's stuff in transition all over the house. And I work best that way. So there's no designated spot. I said, this must be the only place for creation, So place the things where they want to be, because every object in your house is conversating. And if I'm in this section of the house and I have a piece of paper and I'm drawing on it, then everything in this room is like an orchestra telling me what to do. And I really enjoy that sense of community. So we think about even the garments you have on is part of your community. They've been somewhere, they've seen something, you put them on, and when you put them on, everyone that's ever touched them is also singing with you.
Oh, that's a beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. I love the poetics of the way that you think about your artwork, and just your, just life in general. We were talking before the break, and I had the privilege of interviewing you with a group of artists, and a few months ago at the San Francisco Art Gallery, the San Francisco Art Foundation Gallery. And I was like, you know what? We have to carry on this conversation. It just wasn't enough time for me. I need a little bit more of this in my life. So I'm really glad that we're here with this conversation. I want to go back into your long history with art, and I understand you grew up in the South. What sparked your interest in art? And can you recall, was there a particular moment or experience that led you down this pathway of being an artist and living an artful life?
Well, it was about aesthetics because my family lived in the city and then my grandmother lived in the country. And
Mm.
every morning we'd go and get my grandmother, and my grandmother would help my mom and my dad manage the house and also take care of my little sister. Hold on, we just left for some reason.
Uh-oh, I still see you.
Can you still see me? Let me hit my thing and see if I come back. Let's see. Where did I go? If you can see me, I can just keep talking.
Yeah, we can see and hear you perfectly well. This technology just likes to play games with us.
Well, great. Well, so what would happen was in the country, my grandmother planted flowers. She gathered flowers. She had flower gardens. And I also mowed every yard in my neighborhood. So what would happen is they would talk about seeds, they talk about plants, they would talk about orchestrating the garden. And also because many of the neighbors and people were really kind of elderly and they had collections, we'd also talk about the things that they brought into their home and their estate collections. So in conversations about objects that have traveled through time, as well as the aesthetics of what happens when you kneel on the soil, when you go into the woods and you find dirt and you put the seed in the ground and it comes up, and then how you create harmony with that relationship is something that started the element of aesthetics. And also, when I was in junior high, I would also do extricated posters. And I got a lot of attention for the posters that I created, because then I realized, oh, I can kind of draw. So between drawing and working in the garden and looking at collections, I began to understand that there's an order to the world where if you put love into something and someone looks at it, then they stop and they have a conversation with those forms, and that type of medication is very healing.
So you were counting these stories of being in the garden, supporting neighbors, looking at or being invited into some of their collections. And I just think, I'm immediately starting to think of images, and the images as you speak of these things immediately refer to your art. So is your art practice, are you intentionally going back and mining some of these experiences that you had growing up? Oh, are you still here with me? Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Did I lose you? Uh-oh. Let's see if we got Keith back. Maybe that's why the video cut out. Today, are you still here with us? Just so I know that it's not my
I think
connection.
it's just,
Okay.
I think it's
Okay. Awesome. Uh-oh, we lost him for a second. Hopefully he'll be back in just a moment.
I was going to say though, if you're gonna freeze, he was, that he looked very good.
Exactly. Exactly. That
He'll be
that
back
was
in a
definitely the moment.
Yeah.
I was like, hold on, let me just make sure that it's not just my computer going out.
No, you're good.
Yeah. Here we go. You're back. You're back. Technology likes to play games with us, huh?
Okay, we're back now. Sorry about that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no.
so those moments of how, if you pay attention to nature and you have a relationship with nature and you stop and you look, that conversation makes you kind of feel good. Same thing as if you walk into any kind of art space and you look and you go, in that moment you stop and you have to kind of contemplate for a moment. The space in between that is a healing space.
Beautiful, beautiful. I've just as you were speaking, as you're speaking, I start to imagine certain images from your artwork. So much of your work has this. It's almost like a memory space, is what I would say when I look at your your paintings, that's one of the qualities that I really love. It doesn't feel like you're trying to capture any particular moment within the paintings, but a memory, or even possibly something from the future. But then when you start to go into your sculptural work and there's assemblage, there are images, there are flowers, there's these little moments of architectural remnants that come up into the pieces. Would you say that your style of work is derived from, or directly referring to or derived from these experiences in your youth?
Absolutely, because you know what? When it came to kind of architecture and home pride, every little thing made a difference. The way it's painted, the way you care for it, how is it kind of edged. So craftsmanship is really important. And when you think about architecture as well as any object, there's certain objects that were made to come and go quick. And there were certain objects that were made to have a testimony that to let you know that I was here. You know, they were designed by the love that's in them to be here for generations. And because I'm Black and growing up, many of the elder white people around me had collections of African American stuff, and my people didn't have as much as they had, then there was also a question. It's like, well, why do you have it? Well, why don't I have it? You know, so I found it was really important when thinking about these remnants that were once a part of one thing coming together to create another kind of relationship, for their knowing that that relationship was touched by me, calls up a different kind of intimacy with it. You know, recently I've been collecting a lot of really high-end big silver pieces, because what I know about those sterling silver pieces is we look at them and say, oh, well, who owned them? But also, who touched them?
Yes.
Who cleaned them? Who shined them? Who made the bling kept blinging? And what were you thinking when you were touching it? So, and when it's in my space and I'm looking at it, the conversation is rich. And also, even when I'm in the line or in an auction and I'm purchasing these things, the most common question I get was like, oh, you bought that? What are you going to do with it? You know, and then I tell them, I said, well, I'm going to take it to my space and put it among other things similar to it. Like,
oh, I'm curious to the response to that.
And then, oh, yeah, I'm thinking, what? If I'm buying this big vase, if I'm buying this piece of sculpture, I would do the same thing you would do with it. But the reality is, we all judge. You look at my image and you see this opulent thing that I'm carrying, and you may not have seen their relationship historically before. But when you see it next to this, then you understand it. Oh, it's also yours. Yes, and it's also yours. You know, so now you have that memory of that experience, because without the memory of the experience, it becomes invisible, because you don't have a case history that it existed at all.
So I mean, it sounds to me what you're doing is you're reclaiming this history, and you're capturing this. Maybe it's not strictly capturing the history, right? I guess the history is within the objects that become part of your work, behind your lived experience. You're pulling in some of those experiences that would otherwise be hidden. It's much like Fred Wilson mining the museum.
Yes.
Kind of thinking about these objects and repositioning them. But the way that you do it is in a very, very different style than Fred Wilson. Like, you're not just sticking them on a pedestal. Not to say that Fred Wilson just sticks them. Yeah. You're going beyond sticking them in a pedestal. You're creating this actual environment with the people, with the experiences that would be hidden. Is that what you
can think about the things that I create like totems or like ancestral brooches. You know, so, and within this ancestral brooch, you have an African American piece, you have an Asian piece, you have an Indian piece, you have a piece of tapestry, you know, from Indonesia. You have all those things kind of coming together, and you look and go, and you look closer and you go, oh, I know that. Oh, I know that piece. And because you know that piece, now all of a sudden you start seeing similarities on how they orchestrate themselves together. Also, I find it's really important as artists and as beings, when you see something and you really love it, you think about, what is my role with it? Some things I bring home, and some things I look and I go, oh, it's with me for a season, and then I repatriate it. Because understanding it's like, yeah, we like each other, but I think there's a healthy relationship because I had a conversation with this Latina sister, and she was talking about these things, and she's running this organization, and I was showing her some pieces, and when she saw that it was familiar to her, so then I put it in her hands.
Okay, okay.
You know, so you have to know when your work is really done. It's not about gathering everything; it's about gathering it, understanding that it's traveling. And if you put this next to this, they're going to travel together. And as artists, we can think about permanence and impermanence. So we can put these two things together that you might not have seen together before, and it'll go somewhere, and it'll go somewhere, and it'll keep testifying, and it will tell you what to say without having an explanation. This is art. This is what it's supposed to be. It is what you say it is, it might not always agree with what you say it is, but if you're saying this company, you're having a dialogue.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think I would like to just jump right into us looking at your work and talking about it. So just give me a second. I'm going to pull up some of the images, if this will allow me to. Hopefully it will. Let's see, I'm going to take those off. All right, let's just jump right in here because I need to see this work. Oh no, this is all doing too much. Okay, there we go.
Okay. This work of art is 3 feet by 4 feet. It's done probably about 15 years ago. I still do this kind of work. The white, I connect with the Holy Ghost, with fog, with atmosphere, with ancestry. You see a little rose in there. I use a lot of roses and cotton as metaphors for things that we pick in the South that also deal with aspects of class. So I really like atmosphere. Think about atmosphere and smoke like a veil, ceremony, transition. I'm getting ready.
Okay, okay. And these images, where are these images sourced from? Who are these beautiful people that we see in the corner that are fading into this smoke and this mist?
Many of the images I use are family images. This happens to be my grandfather and two of his sisters. But I also buy tintypes, daguerreotypes, and ambrotypes of African Americans.
I love that.
I have hundreds of them. It's important for me to own the actual original image. So I've collected hundreds of those, and I use those in my work as well. But I use them as icons of family and icons of relationship. So I think it's really important that people know that they're mine, because if I see it and I see you, you're mine too.
Okay, okay. There is a very distinct red, white, and blue happening here. I mean, I know that there's other colors, but where my eye, floats to, which is this top right quadrant with the images of the folks, it feels very distinctly red, white, and blue, which in the context of being, within the United States, conjures so many things for me. Is that intentional? Is that a part of the work, or is that something that just maybe functions in a different
I often use white, and I often use red. And red is a healing color. It's a color that when it shows up, action is required. Red is not just a passive color. Red, pink, all those colors blush. It's like, if you cut yourself, then it's a form of healing. So red shows up. That red tie the same way. It's really powerful. It's because it does not show up in a passive manner. So when it shows up, it is to get your attention and to remind you there is a life shift going on here. There's something going on here that requires attention. Red and red roses and white cotton. And I remember reading a book called The Wind Done Gone.
Yes.
And in The Wind Done Gone, there's a little passage in there where she talks about the cotton was so white and the soil was so red, she could only compare it to afterbirth.
Wow. Yeah, that's wild. Even just to think about the soil being that, shade of red.
Yes,
Um,
yes. And if you're alive, you have seen things blush. You've seen things blush. And that with where all of a sudden the blood comes to the surface, even in a bruise. A bruise is a prayer request. It's like, oh, it's like, oh, look at all the colors in that kind of bruise. So when you think about the veil of white, when you think about the how red shows up, it is quite a spiritual color, and I've been around and raised around so many old people to see the red of them leave, their hair
mm,
turn white, their skin change. It's really quite an honor to bear witness to that type of Holy Ghost.
okay, all right. I mean, I love that, right? So this work is not necessarily, you're not hinting towards anything political. You're really looking towards this spiritual and life force within these colors.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I love that. I mean, because I think we're also conditioned that, oh, if it's an African American artist and they're going red, white, and blue, it's got to be political. We're talking about something political. I love the fact that there's also this freedom and that these colors can be stand-ins for other concepts that pre-exist the political,
Yeah.
that they can be free from those.
The flag is not big enough to hold the power of the Black spirit in the human consciousness.
Ooh,
Simply
beautiful.
not. It's not big enough. Those colors existed long before those things ever showed up.
So Keith, I'm just gonna write down everything that you say, and everything is a quotable moment. Absolutely love it. This image also, I'm so glad that we have this one. It's just, I mean, you are a painter through and through. You are a painter's painter. I used to be a painter. I haven't done it in a while. Maybe I'll visit it again. But what calls me again is this atmospheric quality that you're able to create in the paintings, the way that, you know, we're seeing this essentially black and white image that's, if as we look closer, is much more than just black and white, but the way that you've been able to render it, the figure is in motion or in elevation, and the white just things that lifts up from, from the surface, and just this incredible fashion that shows me that you really are a master of this medium. Can you tell us about this piece? And
This is like an oil on canvas piece. I often paint images in white because growing up, I remember the power of my aunts wearing white, and they wore these really tailored white dresses, and they moved really elegantly and very slow, and everything was just very tailored, uh,
mm,
and they were very kind of ethereal in their presence because they didn't talk a lot, but when they said something, they meant it. So they beckon the kind of energy of that single figure kind of standing in a space. Also the idea between black and white and who is it. It's not who is. It's just like where they're from, where they're going, and what you see when you see them. To me, I look at it and I also kind of see a mirror, something that talks about ancestry, something that talks about the ethereal, something that also talks about something that is physical in a way that it was created with layers like the creative process actually was. It's not just boom, there's a body. No, there's a under component, there's a middle component, there's a top component. And when I'm painting these, they start out pretty much realistic.
mm-hmm.
Really, I put in the whole face, I put in everything, and the more I keep painting on them, the more I start sanding things off, putting things on. So even though you can't see the belt and other things, you can feel it there. So I need it there to be able to cloak it over. Otherwise, I'm just creating a sheet in the wind. But if you put a sheet in the wind over a sculpture, that has been standing in space for 300 years, and then it rains, and then the rain dries it for like another 100 years, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. We call it patina. But Tina also happens in artwork like that. When you from the very concept, you know that I'm calling up uh, something. And even in the drawing, I start out with the drawing, and the drawing has to say something before the skin gets on, you know. And then when it says stop, I'll know it's like, okay, you know, no one may have seen where I started, but they will feel where I stopped.
Lovely, lovely. I mean, this painting, and you said 3 foot by 4 foot approximately.
Yeah, you know, this series of paintings was one of the first series that I knew. It's like, oh, people really like these. I had to show a gallery, Guichard. I sent him about 8 paintings. And then he called me an hour later. He said, oh, Keith, good news. All the paintings sold. Oh, good. And then we had another show, and I gave him some more. He said, oh, he called me, you know, within 30 minutes. He said, oh, Keith, every painting sold. And you know, and then he tried to put me in this factory. It's like, I need more paint. I'm like, hold on, wait. It doesn't work that way, you know. So I had kind of stopped painting these for a moment. I still paint them, and there may be 1 or 2 in the next exhibition, but they're very much in me, and I'm drawing on them all the time, and they feel very much connected. The difference is I've never painted these life size or really bigger. So now it's time for them to stand life size and in life size to see what that beckons.
Ooh, I'm excited to. We're definitely gonna get to what's coming up before we finish this. I love when you create these when you have these full installations where folks can walk in, and there's so much of your research that goes into these. We're visually seeing your research and what you're interested in and what inspires you, and also the histories that you're connecting to within your work. In an installation like this, can you tell us more about this transition into the installation work and then the sculptural work?
This is a little small part of was a larger installation where you have things from my studio, things on the wall. There were also things before I arrived in the space. Everything you really kind of see is things I placed there. And then the painting is an oil on canvas, a painting of the landlords, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord from Savannah, Georgia, that are centenarians that also lived during the time of slavery and lived to also know their freedom. The thing about this painting is when you look at a historical image, look at it for its own thing, its own feeling, but we as artists can take it and translate it. So what I did is I took that original image and then I painted them, but I gave him an African staff, and I also subtly changed her facial expression because she told me to. Because I don't know who was on the other side of that camera that took the picture, but I know who's standing in front of them now. And why would you want to have an image, one image of you that travels your entire life, the only image of you, and the only depiction of it is someone that took it that didn't look like you. So when I went to get them and you know and welcome them into my home, then I gave them, and I'm going to paint them several more times to see what they have to say. But the objects around the things is the way we process and the way we feel. I just recently realized that I was an installation artist. I didn't really realize it. I just know that I want a chair, I want some flowers, I want my stuff, I want the painting, you know, and it's like, that feels right, you know, and I want you to sit in the chair, and what do you think? And let's take a picture. I just really realized that because it was so natural, you know, I realized that, you know, it is a type of art that I do.
Yeah, you do, and it's something. I mean, we're getting little glimpses of it behind you, in the left corner, in the right corner of where you're at right. There's a little glimpse of how you live and how you work, and I love that you're bringing that into this space. I think that's also a form of, you know, I know that this is often used for Afrofuturist types of work or for folks who are doing fantasy, but I want to apply it to your work as well. When I say that, it feels like you're world building, you know, not just this world that we currently live in or this reality or these histories that we have inherited, but you're almost kind of creating this alternate space for us to step into and to reconsider. I love how you even changed her face, realizing that probably someone who didn't see her full humanity was the person taking the photograph. And so in a way, you're giving that back to her. Or as you said, I love the way you said it, it's what she would have wanted. It's what she was telling you or was conveying through her facial expression.
Yes, yes. And this is part of a series also where I create these paintings and sometimes I paint live and I have the audience name the paintings. And then we also emancipated paintings and given them passports.
Oh,
So when you take an image that was born during slavery and you paint her life size and you ask a sister in the audience to give this image a name, they give the name, and on that day you emancipate her forever free. So many of these paintings, including the landlords, have a passport, a forever free passport, which will be part of an exhibition, I'm sure in a few years. But right now it's just kind of something that I've always done and given to the paintings, a passport of freedom.
So it feels like you also have this element of being a healer. It's like a shamanistic approach to healing outside of the confines of time. So it feels to me like you are being healed, but us as the current day viewers will receive some healing from the work. But you're also going back and providing some liberation to the subjects that you have, and so I can imagine that also being carried into the future. Am I shooting from the hip here?
No,
Or?
no, no. Yes, 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 yes. The purpose of the art I create is to be a healing force. You think about what's going on in the world and what we as artists are doing to contribute to a sense of belonging, a sense of love, a sense of where have I been and where can I go and who's accompanying me on this trip. That's exactly what my art purpose is to do. It comes to me, we have our dance, I listen, and then it goes off. And when it goes off, because I know the root of how we love each other, and because I know I respect it and I love this relationship, then when it goes off, it's gonna do the way it's gonna echo, its birthright in my company and in the company of whoever purchased it. So sometimes when someone falls in love with the piece, I just listen. And I used to ask them, it's like, oh, should I tell you the history? Now I realize they don't want to hear me. I listen to them and I said, well, why is this your image, your painting? And they explained to me their connection with it. And that's the role, I think, for an artist, to create it and get out the way.
Get out the way.
Listen. Just look and listen. It ain't about us. It ain't about us. Just look and listen. It's like, so I'm really excited to hear people respond to their life experience through the objects put in front of them.
That's a beautiful thing. I love that approach, and to see what people see in it. Now, I'm obsessed with this piece, I've got to say. The way that you go into your assemblage work, but there's the element of everything else that you've ever done incorporated into the work. And the more that I look at this piece, the more I see within it. And that's what's so exciting about it. Please tell us about this beautiful.
It's a young picture of Frederick Douglass. This is Frederick Douglass as a young man. And what you're looking at is you're looking at velvet, you're looking at ribbon, you're looking at hair, you're looking at, a silver-plated spoon, you're looking at antique hairpins. All those things come together to make you consider the world you were born into. What world were you born into? The silver spoon, that has a certain understanding of expectations that kind of come with it. So thinking about the silver spoons, thinking about emancipation, thinking about progress, thinking about aspects of beauty. Because, you look at this image, oh, he's a handsome young man. Why is beauty such a seductive element? It's because beauty says that I'm not the killer. I am the lover. I am what you want to be close to, and I am to be reincarnated again and again and again. I am healthy. So you look at this and go, this young gentleman looking at you is young, is healthy. I mean, but he's also iconoclastic. You may not know who he is, but you're going to know that he's in the company of something that is cradling him.
And these items that are accompanying him, it's just really intriguing. I think the symmetry of the piece. Then there's also this contrast that comes between this tan color and the deep intense black, and then I start to just wonder all these materials, the hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're from the South, and I know we've got my family's also from the South, and we've all got, I mean, I guess most African Americans and African cultures have associations with hair and how hair is used and the power of hair and who should possess another person's hair. I'm gonna go the hoodoo route a little bit on that.
Yes. Like these silver things that happens to be in this drawer that
I love
got
that they're just right there.
piles and kind of piles of. Hair is significant. It's because hair tells a story of what you ate. Also, it holds the sin and the memory and the spirit of someone that has also passed. It also lets you know that I was here, like any other tag or a signature. So like Black folks, we put a little piece of hair in the Bible, and don't exactly know why, it just kind of feels right. In remembrance of me, there's hair. There's a whole series of kind of like mourning art. But when it comes to kind of hair and seeing it, is such a stable of power and presence. Because what happens is, if you get sick or anything, one of the first things that may leave you is your hair. You get older, hair leaves you. But to see a beautiful little lock of hair, it's like, it reminds you of life. Now, also thinking scientifically, one day, there's movies where you can take this little piece of hair and be reincarnated by this little piece of hair. Oh, it's going to do things. This little piece of hair is kind of traveling and it's going to do some things. So when you see patches in my work or this hair, oftentimes, sometimes it's synthetic mixed hair, but sometimes it's also, well, actually most all the time, it's real hair also mixed in with this, because I know in the future, scientists will look and then they will take different parts and they want to know where this from, who this from. Is it bought or did it ever walk?
I love that.
Yeah, so the image is from the traditional like church fan. And putting all these things together is like so exciting to me, because I love joinery, I love mystery. So I'm looking at you look at this piece and it's like, oh, okay, well, how did this get on here and how is this levitating on this form? You can look really close in the piece and it's like, it will do what a gentleman or what a lady does. Certain things will always remain private.
Okay. I love that. There's also this element within the work that, and I don't know if we have any of the pieces that are along this style, but there's definitely some elements even within this piece that remind me of some of the Kingdom of Congo work, like the Minkisi. There's also some things when I think of like Cameroon, and the inclusion of hair and feathers within pieces. Are those is there any intentionality behind some of these references?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a whole room of nothing but African art that I listen to and that we have conversations with. I have conversations with. So yes, all those influences are definitely there. I'm thinking about how we ward away aspects of kind of evil with shiny things in Africa, India, and Asia. You have a round form. Spirit sees itself and it kind of goes the other way. Or like an indigo blue that's also really kind of sacred, and then means the same thing in practically every community. It's also as a protector because evil can get through it. So the whole aspect of how Africa connects to these things, I'm very familiar with the round form and on the chest of African sculptures, and how they carry ritual.
Yes, and you know, and then I also see elements of some of those continuities, but also inventions of the South, um, that come in here. So you're not directly referencing any of these things. You're almost making your own language.
Yeah, yeah, but it's like I know my mama from India, my mama from Africa, my mama and daddy from so India, Africa, Asia. I see all these as one because as a kid, you know, but the community was primarily white, and there was one family, the Shohans, that were Indian, and there were no Latin, no, it was primarily all white. So the first images I started creating had a big Asian influence. I think because I saw an Asian image and I thought she was black. I said, oh, look at
Mm.
the lips, look at that face. So I immediately said, oh, so I started drawing a lot of Asian images and just creating a lot of kind of Asian inspired landscapes. Though I had never seen it or didn't know anyone, it felt like it was mine. And then as time continued, I was educated by the community of what the connection was. In Savannah, Georgia, I had an exhibition, and I walked in, and the security guard gave me a tour of my own exhibition.
I love it.
He was explaining to me the Asian aesthetic and how this artist is obviously Asian. And I said, oh, and I just listened. I was fascinated. And I said, wow. And he was saying, look at the shape of the round form, the economy of brushstroke. I'm like, wow. Okay. I never told him, I'm the Negro that kind of made these pieces. I never told him that because, you know, I'm in undergraduate school, but I had this big exhibition and I was fascinated by his explanation because sometimes it's more important to listen than to be right or wrong. You know, so I was absorbing it, but that gentleman educated me on how India, Africa, Asia are all cousins anyway. You know, it's a cellular memory that occurs, you know, when when you get things together, kind of like a family reunion. You know,
Mm.
these folks need to be introduced to themselves because they're getting kind of familiar here. So you said things, you put in two things together side by side, long enough, they're gonna like, what your name is. Don't worry about what your name is. Just kind of be in relationship. And let me tell you what this is. It's called cousin, or it's called
Yeah,
uncle.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so objects are the same way. So yes, all of those things. You'll notice also, but the palette is definitely a Southern palette because I remember going to church and Reverend McCartney and other ministers who wear these beautiful black robes with this black satin going down black velvet going down the middle. And also in the South, oh, we can't wait till somebody go to glory so they can get dressed up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There are certain people I never saw dressed up unless somebody died. But then the pageantry of a funeral, the clothes, the flowers, you know, it's like it's so, you know, the pageantry of all that is so opulent that I decided I'm not going to die. I'm going to have it now.
Okay, okay. I love that. I love that. That you're not gonna die, you're gonna have it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and with this piece, it's definitely taking me into all of those realms. I mean, I'm glad that you said that. You know, I'm now seeing the scroll that I don't think I saw before, that these particular tassels. But it still has this, I guess this one is very, very much of a blended aesthetic, and I'm zooming in so folks can see the images in the background, which are just absolutely incredible.
The images are a group of Africans in America during the time of slavery. The little image in the middle is an African American man on a memorial button. And then the hand fan is actually like a hand protector that you would have when you're sitting in front of a fire so the embers won't get too hot on your face.
Oh.
The tassels are antique silk tassels, and the little bags at the bottom all have things in them. You know, they're like pockets. So whatever you got in your pockets is probably in these bags. You know, if you are going to leave as an immigrant going to somewhere, and you had to get out of your house quick, you put certain things in your pockets, that's what's in those pockets. Money, prayer cloths, seeds, you name it is in those what I call heirloom bags. Yeah, so those are heirloom bags down there.
I mean, they also are reminding me. I mean, I think I'm just really into. Again, I'm going to go into the ancient kingdom of Congo, and I don't know exactly the name of what we call those, but those also find their way into Haiti as the paquet vaudou. And then, you know, my family's from Louisiana. We've got our mojo hand bags. So is there also an intentional reference to some of this? I mean, obviously we can't go into these bags to see what's in them. And I think there's also a mystique to that.
Yes, yes. The lady that lived next door to my grandmother was a mixed race lady named Miss Sarah. And Miss Sarah was telling me as a child that, you know, she said, my relatives told me not to sell them in words that property, but I sold it to your grandparents anyway. And Miss Sarah was this pretty yellow woman that wore two buns, and she'd swing on her porch, and on her porch swing, she would have these little bags, just like I have in those, and she'd water them, and she'd talk to them, and she would have, you know, she was very mysterious. She had a apple tree in her front yard that I don't think I ever saw an apple drop.
Wow.
So Miss Sarah was kind of like a little, and it was legend that she had a room in her house where her husband had passed away, that he's still in there, and no one ever entered that room. She was very mysterious, and we as children would come and sit on her porch, and she'd kind of talk to us, and she'd laugh, and she'd water those bags. So the idea of, you know, those bags being part of voodoo ceremonies, be part of prayer ceremonies, also be the same bags that if you got a cold, your grandmother could reach in her pocket, take a mint out and say, here, take this. You know, mama's always got some kind of little pouch somewhere to aid in healing. So so from Africa to America to the South, those little mojo bags, those little pockets, yes, they're their own conjurer.
Beautiful, beautiful. We have got a question from Auntie Carol Efwa. Are there any photos, videos, and or cards of your art pieces with a brief explanation like what you're sharing now? It would be great for all sections of our community, especially for youth and students. You are an educator, but do you have, and we spoke before we went live about your work in the community and teaching art in the community. But yeah, do you have any of this stuff for educational purposes?
There's a few things on Instagram, and there's some interviews online, and there's going to be more. You know, my students have taught me so much about how to embrace and you know, and how to be a part of community, that soon I'll start making like 1 minute little talks about what I learned every day. So there are things that exist, and more is coming, because what I do know is the spoken word has a vibratory frequency that can do some things. And I want the opportunity to put myself in the spotlight to see what's going to happen, you know, because I'm not a really like, oh, I'm going to say this. It's like, no, sit down, it's on, let's see. But I know because I'm listening, you know, I'm listening. So because I'm listening first, then when I speak about anything, God and I have already had a conversation.
Beautiful. I'm looking at our time right now. I'm gonna skip a couple of these images because I want to jump into looking at your installation work. I think these are extremely powerful because they're the spaces where you bring together your painting, your collecting, your sculptures, your assemblage works. They all come together in these spaces. And when you have these installations, they're also interactive. So I encourage folks to look at your Facebook, look at your Instagram page and your website to see. I love how on your website there's images of folks actually within some of these spaces and interacting with them.
Yeah, yeah. You know, a chair was designed to sit in. So it's like, why am I gonna have a chair at my show you can't sit in? You know, and the idea of, you know, going to a museum having something untouchable, it's like, okay, you know, you have these African masks in museums not to be touched. Well, you can't touch them, but does anybody touch them? Who was designed to have a relationship with these forms? So at my exhibitions, it's really important to me to have us to have something that you can actually change the temperature of with your presence. You sit in the chair, the warmth of your body, the way you're gonna feel. Because oftentimes when I have a place to sit, you're not gonna roll up on it too fast. You're gonna look at it, you're gonna contemplate it, and then you're gonna set your body down in a manner that the chair says sit down. You know, and that's when you see a lot of ornate things. Oh, it's so ornate, it's so kind of fancy. The ornate and the fancy is there to echo nature. So when you see something that it's been embellished with that kind of bouquet, you stop, you look, you contemplate, and then you sit down. The same thing with a fancy spoon. It's not fancy just to be fancy. It's fancy to slow your heart rate down, to kind of allow you to kind of process, and then to give you that moment of prayer or meditation. So in this form, I often will have black in most of my exhibitions because to me, black is the most beautiful color and is very alive. So thinking about the nuances of how black can be a form of engagement, a form of love, and a form of exchange. So in this exhibition, you have marble tiles, you have Asian cabinets, you have African objects, you have my images, you have mirrors. And then you also kind of have the matriarch in the middle, also holding the beat for the entire space. And to see that image is from the mid 1800s, and the frame is from the 1700s, and they come together to create this dialogue of permanence, which I really, really, really like. Because when I saw her and when I saw this frame and I put them together, I knew that they knew this day would come.
Okay.
Yeah, and you'll see fur in a lot of my exhibitions. You know, there's a fur and feathers, and I use a lot of fur and feathers because where I'm from, they brought in these peacocks, so you see peacocks flying everywhere, and also a sign of not just success, but there are a lot of pheasants and things also in people's houses.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and I just really like the energy of taxidermy and how it got to where it has arrived, and you know, and how it makes you feel certain things. The luxury.
Yeah, and yeah, I think also you know, with your other objects, how it lived. You know, you're also bringing in that spirit, you know, that animal, and then as you were saying, how it's been passed along. You know, who owned this before, that energy that becomes within that space, that history.
Yeah, yeah.
That's beautiful. Can you talk about how you go about composing your work? Does you spoke briefly at the beginning about, you know, living with some of these things within your space and then having them speak to you. Can you go a little bit more into, like, you know, we've seen right now that you've got paintings, you've got these assemblage works, you've got installations, you've got drawings. How do you know what form your work needs to take?
On a daily basis, I'm in the streets. I'm in the junkyards. I'm in the antique stores. I'm always looking. Part of my art practice is finding my ancestral objects. You know, things that I just like. Yeah, and I don't have to like, what am I gonna do with you? No, I like you. You like me. Come on, let's chill. So then I take these things, and then they're covered. You know, it's really, as someone explained, it's really dense. So there's a lot of things around me, and when I bring them, then because there's so many things, I can look at their relationships, and then when I'm working on a piece, this thing, you know, next to this thing makes me feel a way, and if I put this line, it makes me feel a way, and then I go and get a sculpture and I put it together. So that's how they really kind of happen. And sometimes I'll see one image that I really like, and I just paint the image. And then sometimes the image also wants to be accompanied by an object. So it really depends on how the initial topic sentence starts, will depend on how I continue the paragraph.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, all right. So there is all of this research within it. It's not just this intuition. It's the intuition. It's the research. It's the I was recently watching some folks, indigenous folks, but also African American folks and Latinx folks talk about archives. And I was really interested in that they broke down the archives as not just being what we think of this stuffy building that holds documents and photographs, but just objects and things that we have, that we live with, that as being a living archive, that they hold these histories, they hold these stories. And the more time that you spend with them, those stories start to come to you, whether it be in dreams or whether it be something physically on the piece itself. And as you're talking, it made me immediately think of that. You are living with these things. They are speaking through you. And in some kind of way, you go with that intuition, but you're also bringing in that intellect where you are making sure that this thesis statement is present, that your supporting statements are all there before you get to the conclusion, which is that final work.
Everything around you is your monument. Everything around you is something that makes you feel a certain way, from the glasses that are in your cabinet, to the rug that you're walking on, to the bed that you lay in, to the shoe that's on your foot. That is your monument. And sometimes I think it's really healthy to walk in your space as a guest and really look, and what is my space saying about what I'm giving to humanity and how I feel about the life I'm living, because I'm passing through. I'm passing through. And you don't have to leave your body to be in the moment of passing. So you're passing through this space. And it's so exciting to be so fully in the moment that as you're passing through, you're paying attention.
Beautiful. I mean, you are such an inspirational person, the way that you think about the world and the way that you allow us to think about the world and life is just absolutely gorgeous. I want to ask you, and as we get ready to wrap up the conversation, please tell us what you have coming up next. I hear there's something exciting that we all should know about.
There's a solo exhibition at Anglem and Trimble Gallery from January the 6th to February the 24th. It's called Tufted Cotton. It's an exhibition that talks about the relationship between touch and fabric, and touch and portal. So it's going to be at the Anglem and Trimble Gallery. I'm also really, really excited because I'll also be an artist in residence at Recology in San Francisco on Tunnel Street. So
Beautiful.
I'm excited to have there February, March, April, and May. So I'll be there in studio going through, a bunch of stuff and creating things to be returned to certain communities, and creating things to make statements about, currently what's there that wants to have a jam session with me.
Beautiful, beautiful. So at the show coming up in January at Minnesota Street Projects at Anglem Trimble Gallery, what might we see? I mean, I'm thinking cotton, I'm thinking cloth, I'm thinking you were talking about touch.
Yes, you're going to see engaging Black portals that give you time to kind of contemplate life, beauty, and time. And you're all going to see, everything from, how can I say, mink and leopard church pews, things.
Wow. Okay.
So it'll be a very kind of opulent experience about what it means to be in front of a circle, and how does a round portal engage you into a transition or into a trance-like state. And fabric can kind of do that, because we look and we all may go, oh, and there'll be plenty of chairs just kind of sit down, experience. But I have most of the work finished, but the space will dictate how it wants to be laid out. So again, one more relationship. So when I take the things there, you know, but that's what you're going to see. You're going to see an activation of Black in color, community, and consciousness.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that. I love that. And thank you. Today has placed your social media as well as your website in the chat. And which is the best forum for people to keep in touch with you, to find out what's next?
Instagram is always great. Everything is always on Instagram. And if you Google, I think Bryan Keith Thomas, I'm the first one that comes up. So you'll see other links to different things as well. But I'm always on Instagram and checking messages on Instagram as well. So if you need something, you have a question, then you can holler and I'll holler back. Yeah, we need community.